Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today we are going to take a walk into that beautiful state of Kansas for some subscriber Dogman encounters. Before we do that, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the descriptions below. My merch displayed directly under this video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Today's first Kansas subscriber Dogman encounter. Hey Jeff, my name's Jay. I am 43 years old. And what I'm writing to you about happened probably 37 years ago. I've struggled with it in a way my entire life. Not in a way of really being traumatized, but just in a way of not being able to believe that it was real. I've never forgotten about it, and I've never let it go. In fact, it's why I watched 3 different YouTube channels, including yours, in an effort to learn about these things. If it had not been for my experience, I'd think you were all a bunch of fantasy chasers, but my experience would lead me to believe that some of you are onto something. This event happened back or around 1982. I was probably 6 years old at the time, I'd say. 82 or 83. The place was a city named Salina, Kansas. In fact, I can be pretty specific. Our house was on the corner of Revere Drive and South Ohio Street, and our house was the first house on Revere Drive. I believe, even though these days it's a full-blown neighborhood with more that have popped up since. At the time, we were on the eastern or southeastern edge of town. This was a fairly big town of 45,000. Our home was surrounded by open fields, which often had coyotes in them at night. The trees are fairly sparse in central Kansas, and there is really no forest that I remember. A couple of rivers in the area, and Indian Rock, which is a place where there was a major battle between Indian tribes, including the Potawatomi and the Kaw, among others. It's just not at all the type of place where a dogman should be present. But nevertheless, one night in 82 or 83, whatever it was, something hit our house very hard and shook the entire house. This happened several times. It scared me and my sister. My father grabbed his revolver and ran to the front door and opened the door, looking out and saying, "What is that? Oh my God, what is that?" I, at this point, am crying, and I asked what it was. He slammed the door and yelled for us to get into the basement and hide. It hit the house one more time as we went into the basement with my dad, grabbing his Vietnam-era sniper rifle and going from window to window looking out at this thing. At this point, it quit hitting the house, and itself was looking in the windows. He never tried to shoot it, and he just said it eventually trotted off into the fields after losing interest. At the time, pressing him what it was, he just said it was a giant dog that was trying to break in through the window, and at the time, he said nothing more. But I was even more scared when I saw him trade out his regular ammo for his silver .38 special rounds for his pistol. So, the reason he had silver bullets was because he let me watch The Howling, which was a werewolf movie. And I got scared at the time. I didn't sleep until he got silver bullets, which were expensive, but him loading them up scared me so bad I became convinced it was a werewolf. But at that point, I didn't want to know. I had watched The Howling a few months previous, and my fear of werewolves was bad, and has been a lifelong fear. My dad was in Vietnam and was a beast. He was certainly a beast at the age of 34 when this happened. he could bench 400 pounds or more. No one messed with him, and he would not lose a fight. He never got scared except that night. At the age of 70, he is still willing to get into a boxing ring. He's a very hard man, tough as nails. This year, I finally brought the subject back up, asking him what it was out there that night. He said he doesn't know, but it stood at least 7.5 feet tall and weighed 300 to 350 pounds. He said it was on two legs, bipedal, when looking in the windows, but did go on all fours when it trotted off, and it had a weird gait, most similar to a big bear, but really not anything normal. He said he never shot it because all he would have done was made it mad. Besides being 7.5 feet tall, he described it as having extremely thick black fur. In fact, he said the fur was so thick he couldn't make out what the face or ears or eyes looked like. In fact, he couldn't even see the paws/hands well. All he saw in the limited light available was a huge size and thick black fur. He doesn't know what it was, doesn't want to know what it was, and doesn't want to think about it, although I think that him grabbing the silver bullets says it all. And we did have the opportunity to see gray wolves when we lived in Maine. They were 150 to 200 pounds, and he says they were pups compared to the monstrosity that was in his yard all those years back. So, that's the encounter. Other things I can tell you is central Kansas really has no forest that I know of. We don't have bear or wolves or anything like that. We have coyotes and an occasional mountain lion, but nothing like this. On top of that, Kansas is not a hot spot for dogmen. I don't even know where they would hide, but this event happened as sure as I'm breathing, and I will never be able to explain it. I now live in Kentucky, which is a hot spot, but what happened in Salina, Kansas was beyond scary or believable. Thanks for the opportunity to tell my story. This is the first time I have. Today's second Kansas subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, this is a story my dad told me when I was about 12 or 13. Some back history. My dad was raised in a small town called Soldier, Kansas. If you took Highway 62 and went south and turned left, you come to a city called Holden, Kansas, where my Aunt Gertie, my dad's oldest sister, lived. And in Holden, if you turn right onto Highway 75, and you would go south to Mayetta, Kansas. This is where the Prairie Band of Potawatomi Nation Reservation is located. But if you turned right and went west on Highway 16, you would have went through a place called Bucks Grove. All that's there is a church and a cemetery. Then west of it is a house where my dad was actually born. Don't know if that house is still there today or not. If you kept going west, you would go to Jackson County into Potawatomi County and come to Onega Road. And that takes you to Onega, Kansas, where my mom grew up. They both knew mutual people. My Uncle Dean, Mom's oldest brother, set them up on a blind date. The rest is history, as they say. Also, a couple years ago, I found an old atlas of Potawatomi County, and at the bottom, it had the name of the first white person born in that county. I thought that was fairly funny. The rest is history. To keep both sides of my parents' family happy, they decided to rotate holidays every year. Example, Thanksgiving with my mom's side, then Christmas with my dad's side, then they'd switch the next year. When I was 12 or 13, we were at my grandmother and grandfather Graff's, my mom's parents. Dad had to go to Aunt Gertie's for something and visit for a while. Of course, I went with him because I was known as Rush's shadow. We got to Holden, and we did what we needed to do, visited Aunt Gertie. We got back onto Highway 16 and headed toward my grandparents. I was looking out the window, and we got close to Bucks Grove. Dad said, "See those woods over there?" I said, "Yeah." He said, I won't take you hunting or fishing in those woods because there is something evil or bad about those woods. I asked him, what do you mean, Daddy? He told me that years ago some guys were hunting in there. It was a guy and his two best friends that were brothers. Dad said their names, but I can't remember. He said when they got into those woods fairly far, the guy went completely off his rocker, shot and beat both brothers to death with the stock of the gun. When they found the guy, he was shirtless, and the bodies of the dead brothers. He had ripped out one of the brothers' hearts with his bare hands and was eating it. My gut knew the story was true because Dad never really talked about the paranormal, cryptid creatures, and he was brutally honest, probably where I get it from. But now, thinking over that story, and the area is full of Native Americans and their folklore, myth, and legend, I wonder if he got possessed by some evil entity. Just letting you all know, there are more scary things in Jackson County, Kansas than just Dogman, which is scary enough. All right, everyone, that finished the state of Kansas. Now, the next state in line alphabetically would be Kentucky. So, let's jump over to the great state of Kentucky. Today's first subscriber, Dogman, Kentucky encounter. Hey Jeff, I had an encounter when I was 15. I'm from Pike County, Kentucky. I was raised deep in the county, in Canada, Kentucky. My encounter happened fast, but I got a clear look at what I thought was a werewolf. I really believed a neighbor was a werewolf for years. I've told only a couple of people about it. I'm 38 now. I was deer hunting in November. It was a cold day. It was around 6 o'clock in the evening, and it happened the same way as so many other stories I've heard. The woods went silent in a primal fear before I ever saw anything. I was hunting with a pump 12 gauge with slugs, but the fear was something I can't explain. I was frozen in place. I heard a limb break to my right at about 50 to 60 yards, and I caught in my eye. It was solid black with tan skin. I went back later with a friend and measured it using a limb it walked under. It was over 6 foot, and it looked like 500 to 600 pounds. It never looked at me, but I knew it knew I was there. It walked at an angle right to left, and it looked like a bodybuilder. And shooting it never crossed my mind. It looked like a werewolf from Van Helsing with long pointed ears. I had slugs, and I didn't think I could have did anything but upset this creature. I was so scared and helpless. It was a life-changing experience. I don't know where these creatures come from, but they are built like Spartans, like they are ready for war, apex predators. I honestly don't know why it didn't pay any attention to me, but it somehow scared the living crap out of me seeing it. I just figured I'd tell you my story because nobody knows about it other than my girlfriend and a couple other friends. But until you run into one, you can't imagine the true size of a dog, man. I still hunt. I'm just more aware of what's going on. Our government, military knows, and they hide it from us. Today's second Kentucky subscriber encounter. Hey Jeff, I'd like to tell you of a strange creature sighting. Happened back in June. The location was on Route 6 in the Corbin Bypass near Woodbine, Kentucky, at about 3 in the morning. A friend and I were heading back to my house after picking up a third friend who needed a ride home after his car had just broke down. I stopped on the bypass getting ready to turn on Route 6, and to my left I saw what I thought at first were two dogs about to go into the road. There was a raccoon in the middle of the road, and it looked like it had been recently hit. I hadn't noticed it 15 minutes earlier. The two things were going for the raccoon. One was on one side of the road, and the other was about halfway to the raccoon. Not wanting to hit someone's dog, I flipped on my off-road lights. And that's when I said, George, look at that dog. It was something like a dog, Both creatures were the size of a small lab, about 20 inches at the shoulders, higher in the back than in the front, with a long-looking tail. The larger of the two looked at the truck as I stopped. Then we noticed its face. It looked somewhat human. The second creature, now looking away from the light and on its long, thin tail, what appeared to be quills popped out. The first creature then stood up on its hind legs, looked at us and what appeared to be a smile, nodded and walked over and picked up the raccoon, and looked back at the second creature and what appeared to be motioning it for it to come on. It then too stood up and both walked across the road into the ditch. The whole thing probably took under a few minutes, but we got a very good look at them. They were a little under 4 feet tall, tan in color, walked well on their hind legs, and tails with what appeared to be quills. On the second face of the first one seemed almost human, with the eyes and a smile, like it acknowledged us, stopping for it. Behind legs went on all fours, seemed to be taller than the front, and on the front legs were not paws but hands. This occurred in Knox County, Kentucky, which is the next county west of Bell County, Kentucky, which is next to Tazewell County, Tennessee. Some other cryptid sightings. I don't know where these things are coming from, but it's getting a little strange, Jeff. Guy that contacted you after seeing a Dogman in Jackson County. I've seen a Sasquatch, maybe a werewolf. It's definitely getting strange out here. Jeff, maybe some subscribers will have an idea of what these things were. Today's third Kentucky Dogman subscriber encounter. Hey Jeff, I love your YouTube channel. Here's a little nugget of a story that may support the idea of Dogman in Kentucky. I lived in Warren County, Bowling Green, Kentucky for over a decade. A friend, neighbor / co-worker was having a real hard time with an exceptionally large packs of coyote decimating his livestock on his farm. They were implemented by the government to lower the overpopulation of white-tailed deer, the idiots. And now the coyote population was out of control. At the time, I believed it was like $27 a coyote pelt they were paying. And we set out near dawn or near dusk several times to rid his land of several packs, he believed, of coyotes. One evening, I was around 400 yards with an extremely accurate 5.56 rifle and running a 10 by 40 by 50 millimeter optic. A substantial pack of coyote emerged from the tree line to feed on a goat they had mortally wounded the previous evening we had out for bait. It was getting darker every few minutes and the visibility was getting worse through the optic because of it. Right before the coyotes were able to get the bait, they all froze. I'd say there were between 6 to 8 of them, if my memory serves me correctly. Their ears went up, and they were looking at something in the woods. They stared for about 3 seconds and then completely abandoned the bait and ran parallel to the tree line. And when I saw quickly, I mean full-on ran until they were out of sight. I followed their run with my rifle looking through the optic, but quickly returned to my point of aim to the bait, as I did not want to wound one and have it suffer from a badly placed shot. What I saw next was a very large head, coal-black German Shepherd looking, towards our direction and panning back and forth between the direction of the coyotes running. It was looking from behind a tree line, only about 2 yards into the thicket, over a raise in the earth. I'd describe a little hump or a hill from my perspective. When it looked in our direction, something was giving me the feeling that lying in the grass out here about 75 to 100 yards from the truck was not a good place to be. It bordered on the sensation of you get with fight or flight. We chose flight and calmly walked back to the truck with the rifles on safe, looking back every couple of seconds to see if it was going to emerge from the tree line. The next time we went out, I walked over to the area where we had left the dead goat and the carcass was fed on. The hindquarters looked like they were ripped from the animal, and there was no sign of them. The animal's belly was also torn open, and its entrails were pulled out onto the ground in one direction, which was odd for a pack of coyotes all feeding on it, for them not to be in multiple directions looking back now. It's when I went into the tree line about where the dog was hunkered down that I had spooked unexplainable realization. On the other side of the dirt mound was a deep pit. I'd say about 4 feet below ground level in a circular shape. In order for an animal to look over the mound, it had to be in the pit, which would place its head well below the top of the hill. To look over the hill from the bottom of the pit, I'd have to be about 2 feet taller standing upright. I'm 6 foot. You do the math. I'm not so sure what I saw was a German Shepherd at all now. All right, guys, I feel like death is just upon me. I am exhausted and sore, so I am not going to continue any further. Couple things. I've got a interview coming up. I am super excited about this interview. I have actually been waiting for this guy, for me and him to connect, to get it done, because it's going to be great. Also, the next upload is the reason why I wanted to halt right here on top of being completely exhausted, is because the next upload after the interview is going to be a Kentucky subscriber Dogman encounter in the area of the LBL. This subscriber is in his mid-30s and has had encounters with a dogman or many dogmen in his grandparents' vicinity of their house, things like that. And they're some pretty terrifying tale, if you ask me. But yeah, I'm sorry, I can't continue. I'm really not feeling great, and my leg hurts, my stomach hurts, my eyes hurt. So I'd rather just stop now and let this upload be good. Could have been better if I didn't feel this crappy, but oh well, I'm sorry. Anyway, thanks for all your support, guys. I really appreciate it. And with that, be kind to each other, and may the Great Spirit watch over all of us and guide us through the path of life. Until later tonight for the paranormal side, hopefully.